The story of Earth's quiet preparation for a challenge it did not yet fully understand begins in a world that seemed ordinary on the surface. On the ground, people went about their daily lives, completely unaware of the vast eyes watching them from the dark expanse of space. Children played in the streets, teachers explained lessons in classrooms, and parents worked tirelessly to provide for their families. Cities bustled with activity, yet beneath this ordinary life, a subtle tension began to stir, feeling that humanity was on the edge of something extraordinary. Some people felt it as a strange restlessness, others as an unexplainable curiosity about the stars. It was as if the universe itself had whispered a secret that only a few could sense. Humanity's progress had been steady for centuries. People had reached the moon, sent rovers to Mars, and even built small colonies in orbit. But most of their advancements went unnoticed by the wider universe. The Galactic Empire, a vast interstellar power spanning thousands of worlds, had its own ways of observing new civilizations. From their distant star systems, they monitored humanity, seeing not just what humans had accomplished, but also what they were capable of. Unlike many other species that had been easily controlled or assimilated into the empire, humanity displayed something rare: resilience, creativity, and unpredictability. While other civilizations had often surrendered or bent under pressure, humans resisted, adapted, and innovated. These traits, though subtle and largely hidden from the empire's immediate view, were enough to catch the attention of observers who had seen countless worlds rise and fall. Despite the empire's scrutiny, life on Earth seemed perfectly normal. Cities were alive with energy, neon lights reflecting off skyscrapers at night, and streets filled with people hurrying to their destinations. Trains, buses, and cars carried millions through the veins of these sprawling metropolises. People laughed, argued, loved, and lived without knowing that every movement was being analyzed by eyes far beyond the solar system. On one level, the world functioned as it always had, with humans believing that they were the center of their universe. But beyond the atmosphere, satellites hummed silently, telescopes scanned the stars, and secret research stations pushed the boundaries of science. There was a silent preparation underway, almost instinctual, as though humanity itself knew that it would soon face challenges unlike any before. In classrooms and laboratories, young minds dreamed of the stars. Children who were told that the universe was vast and mysterious often looked up at the night sky with fascination. They imagined traveling to faraway planets, discovering alien life, and witnessing wonders that no one else had seen. Many of these children would grow into scientists, engineers, and explorers, carrying with them the spark of imagination that would eventually become a shield against the vast power of the Galactic Empire. Schools nurtured creativity alongside knowledge, teaching students not only about mathematics, history, and physics but also about problem-solving and critical thinking. In small towns and major cities alike, these seeds of curiosity spread, slowly weaving a fabric of innovation and determination that would one day define the human species. Meanwhile, scientists and engineers in secret laboratories worked tirelessly. They were not yet building weapons or massive defense systems. They were building knowledge, technology, and understanding. They explored ways to manipulate energy, harness the power of the atom, and even manipulate gravity in small experimental ways. Satellite networks were expanded to scan space more efficiently, and communication systems grew stronger, faster, and more resilient. Unlike the Empire, which relied on intimidation and brute force, humans relied on ingenuity and careful planning. Every experiment, every prototype, and every new invention brought them closer to an unseen destiny. Even ordinary citizens played a role, though they did not realize it. The farmers who cultivated the land, the engineers who maintained bridges and roads, and the doctors who saved lives all contributed to the strength of humanity. Their perseverance, work ethic, and ability to solve problems in everyday life created a society that could withstand stress, conflict, and uncertainty. These small acts of resilience and intelligence, though mundane on the surface, formed the foundation of a species that could one day face the impossible and prevail. At night, the sky looked peaceful, filled with stars that twinkled like distant fires. On clear evenings, millions of people gazed upward, marveling at the beauty and mystery above them. Some felt a strange sense of anticipation, a subtle intuition that humanity's life would soon change forever. Old legends and myths about the stars circulated, inspiring wonder and curiosity. And even the stories of ancient astronomers who studied the heavens reminded humans of their place in a vast and complex universe. Yet, despite these inklings of destiny, life on Earth remained grounded, practical, and focused on survival, growth, and human connection. The Galactic Empire, observing from afar, noted all of this with a mixture of curiosity and caution. They were accustomed to ruling over civilizations that were predictable, compliant, and easily subdued. Humanity, however, displayed behaviors that defied simple categorization. They adapted quickly to challenges, collaborated in ways that were surprising, and displayed an unusual combination of intelligence and courage. For the Empire, it was a puzzle that could not be solved with conventional tactics. They could not yet see the full extent of humanity's potential, but the patterns were emerging. Even from millions of miles away, the Empire sensed that this was a species unlike any they had encountered before. Yet, despite the watchful eyes above, humans remained blissfully unaware of the impending threat. They did not know that powerful fleets of alien ships silently monitored their progress, nor did they realize that their actions, inventions, and resilience were being catalogued and analyzed. To them, life seemed ordinary, filled with the usual concerns of work, family, and personal dreams. The stars were distant and untouchable, beautiful yet unreachable, and yet, the very traits that made them human: curiosity, innovation, and persistence were quietly preparing them for a challenge that would test every aspect of their existence. It was in this quiet period that humanity's true strength began to emerge. There was no single moment when the world realized what was coming, no dramatic warning that a galactic empire would soon appear at their doorstep. Instead, there was a steady accumulation of knowledge, skill, and resilience, like water slowly filling a hidden reservoir. The smallest innovations, the development of new materials, the creation of advanced computer systems, and the design of sustainable energy solutions each contributed to a growing capacity that would one day protect the planet. People worked tirelessly, often unaware of the larger picture. Yet every effort mattered in ways they could not yet understand. Some individuals did sense the unusual tension in the air. Scientists speculated about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Engineers debated the future of interstellar travel, and amateur astronomers tracked anomalies in the sky. These whispers of curiosity, combined with the steady progress of technology, created an environment where humanity could adapt and evolve in ways that were subtle but incredibly effective. It was not fear that motivated them, but a natural desire to explore, understand, and survive, a combination that would eventually prove to be humanity's greatest strength. As the days turned into months and the months into years, this quiet preparation continued. The world seemed calm, almost as if the chaos of the galaxy was a distant concern. And yet, beneath the surface, a transformation was taking place. Humanity was learning, growing, and evolving at a pace that even the Empire could not predict. Every invention, every discovery, and every act of human courage and intelligence was a step toward a future that was unknown, yet full of promise. By the time the Empire's presence was finally revealed, humanity had already laid the groundwork for its survival. They had built networks of knowledge, systems of defense, and a culture of innovation that made them ready to face challenges that seemed impossible. What seemed like ordinary life was, in fact, a rehearsal for the greatest test humanity would ever face. The children playing in the streets, the scientists working late into the night, and the ordinary people carrying on with their lives were all part of a silent, unseen resistance. They did not yet know it, but they were preparing the planet for the moment when Earth would close its doors to the galaxy and show that humanity could not be stopped on the end. This quiet period, the seemingly mundane years before first contact, was crucial. It was a time of learning, of growing, and of building strength without even realizing it. Humanity's resilience, ingenuity, and curiosity were developing in ways that no one, not even the Galactic Empire, could have predicted. And while the people of Earth carried on with their everyday lives, the universe was already taking notice. A species that seemed ordinary was quietly preparing to become extraordinary, and the stage was being set for a confrontation that would test the limits of courage, intelligence, and determination. The calm that had settled over Earth for centuries was suddenly broken. Humanity, so used to the quiet rhythms of daily life, was about to be introduced to a force it had never imagined. The first signs were subtle: a strange pattern of communications intercepted by scientists, satellites detecting unidentifiable objects, entering the outer edges of the solar system, but it quickly became impossible to ignore. Then, without warning, the truth revealed itself in full, terrifying clarity. Massive alien ships, enormous in size and design, appeared in Earth's orbit, casting shadows over entire continents and blocking the sun in some places for brief moments. The sky, once a familiar dome of blue, now seemed alien and threatening. The Galactic Empire had arrived. These ships were nothing like anything humanity had ever built or even imagined. They were sleek yet imposing, metallic leviathans that hummed with a power that made the ground beneath the cities vibrate. Their surfaces were smooth, reflective, and impervious to conventional weapons. On their decks, hundreds of smaller crafts moved with perfect coordination, ready to respond to any movement below. Governments around the world scrambled in disbelief. News agencies tried to broadcast the events, but the sheer scale of the ships made communication feel small and insignificant. Humanity realized, in a sudden gut-wrenching moment, that the universe was no longer distant. It had arrived at their doorstep, and it was not here for diplomacy or friendship. The Empire's initial messages were stern and uncompromising. Through a frequency that could be picked up across the globe, a voice spoke a language that Earth linguists struggled to understand, yet somehow translated through the Empire's advanced technology. The message was clear: Earth must submit. Resistance would be met with force, and failure to comply would bring annihilation. The word sent waves of panic across nations. Military leaders debated strategies, while politicians argued about whether to comply. negotiate, or fight. The ordinary citizens were terrified, watching as their world suddenly became a stage for forces they had only seen in science fiction. Yet, amid the fear, humanity did not collapse. Instead, something remarkable happened. Governments, often divided by politics and borders, found a shared purpose. Leaders convened in emergency summits, scientists and engineers were mobilized, and resources were pooled in ways previously thought impossible. The message was clear. If Earth was to survive, every human being, every skill, and every invention would matter. Cities that had once competed for influence and power now collaborated, sharing information and technology. For the first time in centuries, humanity was united by a common goal: the survival of their species. Behind closed doors, top scientists began analyzing the alien ships, trying to understand their technology, weaknesses, and capabilities. These were not just battleships, they were mobile fortresses, powered by energy sources humanity could only speculate about. Yet, human ingenuity was not easily deterred. Engineers and physicists worked tirelessly, developing systems that could counteract or evade the Empire's advanced sensors, cloaking devices, electromagnetic shields, and decoy technologies were designed in secret laboratories and tested in orbital simulations. Unlike other civilizations the Empire had encountered, humans did not rely on sheer force. They relied on cunning, adaptability, and creativity. Every solution they developed was a step toward survival, and every failure taught them more about their enemy. Citizens, too, played a role, though many did not realize it. Volunteers joined emergency response teams, engineers in factories adapted machinery for defense purposes, and communication experts monitored signals for any sign of the Empire's plans. The world was transforming into a coordinated effort, a network of human minds working together toward a single goal. Even small acts sharing knowledge, protecting local resources, or supporting community efforts aided to the planet's overall resilience. In a way, humanity itself was becoming a living, breathing defense system, prepared to act in ways that the Empire could not predict. The Empire, confident in its superiority, initially assumed that a show of force would be enough to break human morale. Their ships moved into strategic positions, blocking key cities and attempting to demonstrate their dominance. Massive energy beams cut across the skies during practice drills, while small teams of scouts hovered over major population centers. But humans responded in ways that surprised the invaders. Orbital satellites, once used for communication and observation, were modified into stealth monitoring systems. Cities implemented emergency protocols that allowed civilians to stay safe, while scientists and engineers deployed countermeasures. The humans were unpredictable, fast to adapt, and increasingly coordinated. Each maneuver by the Empire was met with a human solution that often turned their own tactics against them. Diplomats attempted to negotiate, hoping to avoid direct conflict, but the Empire's demands were uncompromising. Humanity, however, had learned the value of strategy. Representatives from different nations met in secret, drafting plans that combined diplomacy, technology, and misdirection. They sent messages to the Empire that contained truth interwoven with controlled misinformation, keeping the invaders uncertain about Earth's true capabilities. The aliens had expected a simple, easily dominated planet, but instead, they found a species capable of thinking many steps ahead, a species that could anticipate moves and counter them with precision. At the same time, ordinary life continued on Earth, blending the extraordinary with the mundane. People went to work, schools remained open in some regions, and life moved forward despite the looming threat. Citizens watched the skies with awe and fear, some snapping photos, others writing in journals, and a few simply standing in silence, feeling the weight of history pressing down on them. Stories spread of heroic acts, engineers repairing critical systems under fire, pilots guiding supplies through dangerous orbital corridors, and communities supporting each other in ways that inspired hope. Humanity's spirit, often taken for granted, was becoming its most potent weapon. The Empire's presence also had unintended consequences. The sudden appearance of alien fleets sparked curiosity and innovation. Universities, laboratories, and independent researchers accelerated programs that had been dormant for years. Young minds inspired by the challenge pushed technology further than anyone had imagined possible. New energy sources, communication systems, and spacecraft prototypes were developed at record speed. Humanity was not only defending itself, it was advancing, turning fear into fuel for progress. Even children, who once only dreamed of space travel, began imagining practical ways to reach the stars. In their innocence, they were contributing to a culture of hope and determination that would define humanity's response to the threat. As months passed, humanity learned to operate under constant pressure. Cities became highly organized, transport networks optimized, and emergency systems fine-tuned. Scientists developed simulations of potential attacks, testing defenses, and exploring countless scenarios. Engineers worked to create automated systems capable of responding faster than human reflexes could manage. The entire planet became a coordinated, living defense network, not through coercion but through collective will, intelligence, and cooperation. What the Empire had thought would be a quick demonstration of power instead turned into a protracted test of human ingenuity. The turning point in Part 2 came not from battle or destruction, but from realization. The Empire began to recognize that Earth was unlike any world it had encountered. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and resourceful in ways that could not be measured by conventional metrics. Their ability to adapt and innovate on the fly created a dynamic environment in which the Empire could not easily dominate. The very things the invaders considered weaknesses, the humans' diversity, their disagreements, and their complex societies became strengths in this unprecedented confrontation. Each nation, community, and individual added layers to Earth's defenses, creating a multidimensional resilience that the Empire had not anticipated. By the end of this stage, humanity had not yet fought a full-scale war, but it had already won a crucial psychological victory. Citizens realized that panic was not an option, and leaders understood that unity was essential. Scientists and engineers had demonstrated that intelligence and ingenuity could match, and even surpass, brute force. The Empire, confident in its ability to crush a planetary civilization, began to hesitate. Its leaders faced a growing uncertainty. Could this species, so seemingly fragile, really resist a galactic superpower? Humanity's response in this period was remarkable, not because of the weapons it deployed, but because of the collective spirit it displayed. Across the planet, ordinary people became extraordinary. They worked tirelessly, innovated boldly, and supported one another in ways that ensured survival was possible. The fear of annihilation was transformed into determination, a drive to not just endure but to outsmart a force that believed it could dominate effortlessly. Every day, humanity learned more about the alien threat and more about itself. It became clear that survival would depend on intelligence, foresight, and collaboration more than brute strength. In retrospect, this period marked the true beginning of humanity's defense. The arrival of the Galactic Empire had been a shock, but it also served as a catalyst for unity, innovation, and courage. Earth, once perceived as ordinary and easily conquerable, was slowly transforming into a planet ready to resist, ready to defend its people, and ready to show the galaxy that humanity could not be underestimated. It was a time of learning, adaptation, and preparation, a period that would determine the fate of every human on the planet. The quiet before the battle had ended, replaced by a determined, intelligent, and united species standing against the vast unknown, ready to turn fear into strength and uncertainty into strategy. By the time humanity had faced the initial arrival of the Galactic Empire, it had already begun to understand the scale of the challenge before it. The first months had been terrifying, filled with confusion and fear, yet also with remarkable displays of intelligence, courage, and collaboration. Ordinary citizens had seen the shadows of alien ships across their cities, and scientists had discovered that the Empire's technology was far more advanced than anything Earth had produced. But humans were nothing if not adaptable. Where other civilizations might have crumbled under the pressure of intimidation and overwhelming firepower, humanity began to find ways to turn fear into action and to challenge the impossible with ingenuity. It began with small victories, often invisible to the public eye but monumental in effect. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly in hidden labs and orbital stations, devising methods to neutralize or confuse the Empire's surveillance systems. Their solutions were clever, sometimes simple, sometimes extraordinarily complex, but always effective. They developed decoy satellites that emitted false signals, created cloaking mechanisms that hid key installations from detection, and used electromagnetic pulses to temporarily disable sensors. Each success, while minor on the scale of galactic warfare, strengthened the confidence of humanity's leaders and citizens alike. It became increasingly clear that the Empire, for all its power, had underestimated the human mind. As weeks turned into months, humanity's efforts expanded beyond defensive measures. Engineers converted civilian spacecraft into rapid response vehicles, capable of maneuvering in orbit to intercept small enemy crafts. Drones, automated systems, and early artificial intelligence protocols were developed to predict and respond to movements faster than human reflexes alone could manage. Earth's military strategists, for the first time in centuries, felt a surge of optimism. Humanity had turned the game into something more complex than a simple confrontation of firepower. It had become a battle of intellect, adaptability, and creativity. The Empire, initially confident that its massive fleet alone would bring compliance, began to realize that it was facing an unpredictable adversary. Its scouts reported unexpected failures in their reconnaissance, and patrols found themselves unable to track key installations. Ships that had moved with precision now faced interference, confusion, and delayed response times. For the first time in its history, the Empire encountered a species that could outthink it, a species that could anticipate its moves and turn even technological superiority into a challenge. The psychological impact on the alien forces was profound. They were accustomed to worlds that yielded with a few threats or displays of power. Earth, however, was different. It did not respond predictably. It resisted, adapted, and innovated. Civilian populations, though initially terrified, began to participate in these small victories. Engineers and technicians worked around the clock, often under extreme pressure, to keep communications lines secure and defense systems operational. Citizens volunteered in ways both ordinary and extraordinary, from managing logistics to organizing evacuation plans to protecting vulnerable areas. Schools and universities became hubs of innovation, where students contributed to technological solutions, proving that even young minds could play a pivotal role in survival. Humanity's ability to adapt collectively became its greatest weapon, turning fear into a tool for progress and transformation. The Empire, seeing repeated failures in its attempts to dominate, grew increasingly frustrated. Fleet commanders, accustomed to unquestioned authority, struggled to understand why the humans continued to resist. Their attacks, often designed to demonstrate dominance, were met with innovative countermeasures. When one fleet attempted a display of firepower over a major city, human engineers had already deployed electromagnetic shields that rendered the attack largely ineffective. Orbital drones disrupted targeting systems, while hidden satellite arrays intercepted communications, feeding false information back to the Empire. What was intended to be a demonstration of power became an example of human ingenuity, leaving alien commanders puzzled and unnerved. It was during this period that humanity's resilience became most evident. People learned to thrive under extreme stress, to collaborate across borders, and to maintain focus even in the shadow of annihilation. Cities implemented emergency systems that allowed life to continue even as alien ships hovered above. Hospitals, power plants, and communication networks were fortified and automated. The ability to respond quickly and adapt to changing circumstances became second nature. While the Empire relied on intimidation, humans relied on preparedness and intelligence. Each day, they grew more confident, more capable, and more united. The turning point in this phase came when humans began to shift from pure defense to strategic offense. Not in the sense of attacking the Empire with overwhelming force. They lacked the weaponry to do so, but by anticipating and countering the Empire's moves. Scientists used simulations to predict patrol routes, fleet movements, and potential attacks. Engineers modified spacecraft to maneuver undetected and to disrupt enemy communications. Satellites created controlled interference patterns that made it impossible for the Empire to track or predict human actions reliably. It was no longer a matter of survival alone. Humanity was shaping the battle on its own terms, outsmarting a foe that had never known defeat in such a subtle, intelligent manner. At the same time, the psychological resilience of humanity played a crucial role. Citizens were informed in controlled ways about the developments, maintaining morale without spreading panic. Stories of small victories, of engineers saving key facilities or scientists preventing disasters, circulated widely, inspiring hope and determination. People learned that fear could be managed, that courage could be collective, and that intelligence and creativity could counter even overwhelming power. The unity of purpose across nations, communities, and even individual families created an invisible network of resilience that the Empire could not comprehend or undermine. The Empire's attempts to impose its will began to falter. Initial assumptions that humans would comply under threat of destruction proved disastrously wrong. Every attempt to intimidate, control, or overpower was met with innovative solutions and adaptations. Ships that were expected to dominate orbital space were tricked by decoys and electronic interference. Patrols sent to monitor human movements returned with incomplete or misleading data. Leaders of the Empire began to recognize a pattern. Humanity did not react predictably, and its responses were often faster, smarter, and more effective than anticipated. A species that seemed primitive, fragile, and inconsequential had already demonstrated the ability to challenge the galaxy's most powerful force. This realization prompted an internal struggle within the Empire. Fleet commanders argued with one another about tactics, some advocating for immediate destruction, others warning that more subtle approaches might fail. Plans that relied on simple intimidation were reconsidered, as humans had proven that resilience and intelligence could counter even the most sophisticated threats. The Empire had underestimated the determination of a species that had faced adversity for centuries and adapted to survive. Earth's defenses, both visible and invisible, were not built overnight, but over decades of ingenuity, collaboration, and persistence. Amidst this tension, humanity continued to grow stronger. Every failure was a lesson, every challenge an opportunity to improve. Scientists discovered new ways to manipulate energy. Engineers created better orbital defense systems, and citizens learned to function under pressure with remarkable efficiency. The collective intelligence of humanity was emerging as a force more powerful than any weapon. The Empire, with all its fleets and firepower, had yet to encounter a species capable of thinking so creatively, acting so unpredictably, and coordinating so effectively across an entire planet. The stage was set for even greater challenges. While humans had not yet engaged in full-scale conflict with the Empire, they had already claimed victories that mattered more than any battle. The victory of confidence, ingenuity, and unity. humanity had learned that its greatest weapon was not firepower, but the ability to adapt, anticipate, and innovate. Each action, each invention, and each successful defense strengthened this foundation. Ordinary citizens became heroes, scientists became generals, and engineers became strategists. Together, they had transformed fear into determination, chaos into coordination, and survival into strategy. By the end of this phase, humanity had reached a critical milestone. They had survived the initial shock, learned to operate under extreme pressure, and begun to influence the dynamics of the confrontation with the Empire. The first contact had revealed not just the threat of alien domination, but also the boundless potential of human resilience. Ordinary people had become extraordinary not because of weapons, but because of intellect, creativity, and courage. The Empire's failure to quickly dominate Earth was a testament to humanity's ability to think, adapt, and unite in ways that even the galaxy's greatest power could not anticipate. Humanity was no longer merely a planet under observation. It had become a force of intellect, determination, and innovation, capable of shaping the outcome of events far beyond its previous reach. The seeds of resistance sown in secret labs, classrooms, and city streets had grown into a living, breathing network of intelligence and strategy. By outsmarting the Empire at every turn, humans had transformed fear into opportunity, chaos into control, and the threat of annihilation into a catalyst for progress. In doing so, they had not only survived, they had begun to define their own destiny in a galaxy that had assumed they would be powerless. And so, humanity faced the next stage of its struggle not as a species on the brink of destruction, but as a civilization beginning to understand the true measure of its strength. The Galactic Empire, with all its technology, firepower, and experience, had met a challenge unlike any it had ever faced. Humans were clever, resilient, and united, and they had proven that survival required more than compliance. It required intelligence, creativity, and courage. Part 3 marked a turning point, the moment when humans realized that, even against overwhelming odds, they could not only resist but also shape the battlefield itself, taking the first steps toward proving that the Empire, despite its vast power, could not stop them. The confrontation between humanity and the Galactic Empire had reached a point where every decision mattered, and every action carried immense consequences. By this time, humans had already demonstrated that intelligence, adaptability, and unity could counter the Empire's superior technology. What had started as a defensive struggle had evolved into a strategic battle of wits, patience, and planning. Humanity now faced the most critical phase of the confrontation, the turning point, where survival would depend not just on preparation, but on courage, timing, and unwavering determination. The Galactic Empire, frustrated and increasingly cautious, escalated its attempts to assert dominance. Massive fleets, larger than any seen before, were dispatched toward Earth. These were not just observation ships or patrol fleets, they were war machines designed to overwhelm, intimidate, and destroy. Entire cities were within their reach, and their firepower could obliterate structures with a single strike. Humanity watched as these fleets moved closer, their shadows stretching over oceans and continents. Governments, scientists, and citizens alike knew that this would be the defining moment of history. Failure could mean extinction, but success could redefine what it meant to be human behind the scenes. Earth's leaders were calm, focused, and methodical. Years of preparation, innovation, and collaboration had created a complex network of defenses, communication systems, and intelligence operations. Scientists monitored the approaching fleets, predicting their maneuvers with astonishing accuracy. Engineers and pilots prepared spacecraft, drones, and automated systems, all designed to act faster than human reflexes could manage. Unlike other civilizations the Empire had faced, humans were not relying on force alone, they were relying on adaptability, anticipation, and ingenuity. Every possible scenario had been rehearsed, simulated, and planned for, and humanity was ready to face the challenge. The first encounter was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Alien ships appeared in the sky in patterns that suggested perfect coordination, as if the Empire had studied Earth's defenses and planned a flawless strike. But humans had anticipated this. Decoy satellites, cloaking devices, and automated interference systems disrupted the Empire's communications and targeting systems. The warships, despite their immense size and firepower, struggled to coordinate. Fleets that had expected to overwhelm quickly found themselves dealing with confusion, unexpected countermeasures, and invisible obstacles. Every move humanity had made in preparation now came to life in a synchronized, almost artistic defense. Civilians experienced the battle in ways both immediate and indirect. Some watched the skies, awed by the sheer size of the alien ships and the energy weapons they carried. Others were shielded from the direct threat, as cities activated emergency protocols, automated systems, and secure shelters. Yet even ordinary citizens contributed to the struggle. Engineers, pilots, and communication experts coordinated in real time, creating a network of human ingenuity that made the Empire's massive fleets less effective. Volunteers transported supplies, repaired critical infrastructure, and kept essential services running. Humanity's strength was not just in technology, it was in people acting together, thinking ahead, and refusing to succumb to fear. The Empire, for the first time, faced real uncertainty. Their strategies, effective against other civilizations, failed repeatedly against humans. Fleets that had once moved with precision now encountered interference, delays, and unexpected outcomes. Plans intended to intimidate and control instead met countermeasures that the Empire could not predict. Each failed attack weakened morale, while humanity's confidence grew. The invaders began to understand that Earth was not just defending itself, it was controlling the battlefield. Humans were turning the Empire's assumptions and technology against them, showing that cleverness could overcome raw power. Key victories during this stage were not the destruction of alien ships, but the prevention of catastrophic damage. Energy beams that could have destroyed cities were deflected by shields. Communication networks were kept online despite interference, and orbital defenses neutralized threats before they reached the planet's surface. Each successful maneuver reinforced humanity's sense of agency, proving that even against a seemingly unstoppable force, careful planning and intelligence could ensure survival. Citizens began to believe in their collective power, realizing that the ingenuity and courage of individuals could combine into a force greater than any weapon. While the Empire attempted to adjust its tactics, humans continued to innovate. Orbital drones acted autonomously to intercept small enemy crafts, creating confusion and forcing the Empire to divide its attention. Engineers deployed electromagnetic pulses at precise intervals to temporarily disable sensors, giving humans a critical advantage. Scientists devised ways to predict enemy movements, using simulations and real-time data to anticipate attacks before they happened. Humanity's ability to think several steps ahead allowed them to turn what seemed like desperate defense into calculated offense. Even the psychological aspect of the confrontation played a major role. Humans maintained morale on the ground, ensuring that citizens remained focused and hopeful. Stories of successful countermeasures, brave acts by pilots and engineers, and small but significant victories spread quickly, reinforcing unity and resilience. The Empire, in contrast, struggled to maintain confidence. They had faced many civilizations, but never one that could combine intelligence, creativity, and courage on a planetary scale. The uncertainty began to affect decision-making, creating hesitation and internal conflict among their commanders. During this phase, humanity also learned to exploit the weaknesses of the Empire's strategy. The invaders relied heavily on overwhelming presence and intimidation, assuming that fear would ensure compliance. Humans, however, refused to be intimidated. They used misdirection, stealth, and adaptability to turn the Empire's assumptions against them. For example, simulated cities and decoy installations forced fleets to expend energy and resources on targets that were not critical. Orbital shields and automated defenses neutralized attacks without risking human life. Every successful countermeasure demonstrated that the Empire's power, though vast, could be mitigated by intelligence, creativity, and coordination. The turning point came when humans began to exert influence beyond their immediate defense. Rather than reacting solely to the Empire's moves, they started shaping the engagement itself. Orbital simulations allowed strategists to predict likely attack patterns, while automated systems created zones that the Empire could not penetrate. Humans were no longer simply defending, they were controlling the flow of the battle. Fleets that had expected passive compliance now faced a civilization capable of anticipating moves, countering strategies, and maintaining initiative. For the first time, humanity was setting the terms of engagement rather than responding to them. This period also revealed the extraordinary capacity for collaboration across borders, disciplines, and individual skills. Scientists, engineers, pilots, and ordinary citizens worked together in ways previously thought impossible. Knowledge was shared openly, resources were pooled, and decisions were made collectively. Communities supported each other, ensuring that every effort contributed to the larger goal. Humanity's greatest strength became not technology alone, but the ability of millions of people to act as a coordinated, intelligent, and adaptive system. The Empire could deploy fleets and weapons, but it could not replicate the decentralized creativity, resilience, and unity of Earth's population. By the end of this stage, the Empire faced an uncomfortable truth. Earth could not be easily subdued. Its defenses were not only sophisticated, but adaptable and self-reinforcing. Humans had demonstrated that even against the galaxy's greatest power, intelligence, creativity, and collaboration could provide the edge needed to survive. The Empire had assumed dominance would be immediate, yet months of engagement had proven otherwise. Every failure, every countermeasure, and every moment of human ingenuity had shifted the balance. Earth was no longer a passive world, it had become an active force, capable of shaping its destiny. The consequences of this phase were profound. The Empire, despite its technological might, began to hesitate. Fleet commanders debated whether to continue aggressive action or reconsider their approach. Confidence wavered as they realized that human adaptability and ingenuity were forces they could not easily predict or control. On Earth, confidence surged. People understood that the survival of their species depended not only on technology, but on courage, unity, and creativity. Humanity had proven that it could resist, adapt, and even influence the movements of a civilization far more powerful than itself. Amid the tension, hope became a tangible force. Ordinary people continued with their lives, inspired by the knowledge that their collective actions mattered. Engineers developed new systems, scientists proposed innovative solutions, and citizens remained vigilant and cooperative. Even children, studying the stars and dreaming of space travel, became symbols of a species determined to survive against overwhelming odds. Humanity's ability to combine intelligence, adaptability, and resilience created a network of power that the Empire could not easily penetrate. Every act, no matter how small, contributed to the planet's ongoing resistance. This phase marked a critical lesson for both humanity and the Galactic Empire. Power alone does not guarantee victory. Intelligence, creativity, unity, and courage can rival even the most overwhelming force. Humans had turned the confrontation into a battle of intellect, strategy, and foresight. Every failed attack by the Empire became a learning opportunity. Every innovation a step toward securing the planet. Humanity was no longer reactive, it was proactive, capable of shaping events rather than merely surviving them. By the end of Part 4, Earth had become a symbol of resilience and determination. The Empire, despite its massive fleets, weapons, and experience, had failed to break the will of humanity. Citizens had learned that survival required courage and collaboration. While leaders understood that intelligence and foresight could rival any technological advantage, humanity had not only defended itself but had begun to assert control over the engagement. The stage was set for the final resolution, a moment when Earth would prove that the combined strength of human ingenuity, unity, and resilience could defy even the mightiest power in the galaxy. After months of tension, preparation, and strategic engagement, humanity stood at the threshold of a historic moment. The Galactic Empire, which had arrived with fleets of unimaginable size and weapons capable of obliterating entire cities, had begun to realize that Earth could not be easily conquered. The battles had tested every aspect of human ingenuity, courage, and resilience. Ordinary citizens had become part of an extraordinary effort. Scientists and engineers had created solutions far beyond previous capabilities, and leaders had coordinated the planet's collective knowledge and resources into a defense unlike any the galaxy had ever witnessed. Now, humanity was on the brink of a new phase, not simply survival, but the assertion of its autonomy and power. The Empire, frustrated and disoriented, attempted to regroup. Commanders held councils aboard massive warships, debating their next steps. They had faced civilizations before, but never one like humanity. Every tactic had been countered, every expectation subverted, and every plan that relied on intimidation or brute force had failed. They began to sense a rare and unsettling truth. This species, underestimated for centuries, was capable of resisting, adapting, and ultimately controlling the course of events. The confidence that had driven their expansion across thousands of star systems was shaken. For the first time, they confronted a civilization that could not be dominated by size, strength, or technology alone. Meanwhile, humans on Earth were preparing for what could be the decisive moment. The planet's defenses had evolved into an intricate network of systems, strategies, and coordinated personnel. Orbital shields and decoys protected major cities. Automated drones and spacecraft monitored enemy movements, and scientists continued to develop technologies to anticipate and counteract every maneuver the Empire could deploy. Yet, beyond these technological preparations, humans had cultivated something even more powerful: unity. Across continents, nations collaborated, communities coordinated, and ordinary citizens contributed in ways both visible and hidden. It was a collective effort that no amount of firepower could break. As the Empire approached with its largest coordinated fleet yet, the skies above Earth became a theater of tension, anticipation, and precision. Ships glided silently in orbital patterns, their hulls reflecting sunlight and casting enormous shadows across oceans and cities. Humans watched, both in awe and apprehension, as decades of preparation were about to be tested in a confrontation that could determine the fate of their species. But this time, they were not merely reacting, they were shaping the engagement. Every countermeasure, every technological innovation, and every strategic move had been designed to neutralize the Empire's advantages while minimizing risk to the planet and its people. The first exchange was dramatic, yet revealing. The Empire deployed energy weapons intended to strike fear and assert dominance. Massive beams cut across the upper atmosphere, targeting key installations and orbital stations. Humans, however, had anticipated such an assault. Shields activated seamlessly, redirecting energy in controlled arcs, protecting vital infrastructure while leaving the attackers frustrated. Automated drones intercepted smaller crafts and disrupted targeting systems, causing confusion among the alien fleets. Decoy installations, combined with controlled interference, forced the Empire to waste resources on false targets. What had been intended as a show of overwhelming power became a demonstration of human intelligence, foresight, and adaptability. In the cities below, people watched the events unfold with a mix of fear, awe, and pride. Emergency protocols ensured safety, but citizens also understood that their role in humanity's survival was indirect yet crucial. Engineers maintained systems, volunteers organized logistics, and communication networks relayed real-time intelligence. Schools and universities functioned as hubs of innovation, where students contributed ideas and solutions that enhanced the planet's defenses. The collective effort of millions turned Earth itself into a living, coordinated organism capable of anticipating and countering attacks from an enemy many times stronger. The Empire's frustration grew. Commanders realized that sheer force would not prevail against humans. Every maneuver was met with countermeasures that seemed to anticipate their next move. Attempts to intimidate through sheer presence or overwhelming displays of firepower failed repeatedly. The humans' ability to innovate, adapt, and coordinate on a global scale defied the Empire's expectations. Even internally, disagreements arose among the alien commanders, some advocating for continued aggression, others suggesting withdrawal or more cautious tactics. Earth had become a puzzle that the Empire could not solve. Humanity, in contrast, grew stronger with each passing moment. The people had learned that fear could be transformed into focus, and that preparation, unity, and intelligence could compensate for any disadvantage. Scientists and engineers continued to innovate under pressure, developing new ways to manipulate energy, enhance communication, and strengthen defenses. Drones operated autonomously, responding faster than human reflexes could manage, while orbital satellites monitored the vast fleets and anticipated patterns of movement. Earth's coordinated response became a dynamic, adaptive system that challenged the very assumptions of the Empire. Beyond technology, humans relied on courage and psychological resilience. Citizens supported one another, maintained morale, and understood the significance of their collective effort. News of successful countermeasures and heroic acts spread rapidly, reinforcing the belief that humanity could endure even the most overwhelming odds. Pilots, engineers, and soldiers performed feats that combined ingenuity with bravery, proving that the survival of the species depended not only on advanced technology but also on the courage and determination of individuals, acting as part of a greater whole. The confrontation reached a point where the Empire had no choice but to reconsider its approach. Months of engagement had demonstrated that humans could not be subdued through intimidation, aggression, or conventional strategies. Earth's defenses were sophisticated, adaptive, and resilient. Its people were united, intelligent, and determined. Every fleet sent to enforce dominance had been met with calculated resistance, and every attempt to predict human behavior had failed. For the first time, the Empire confronted a civilization that could not be conquered without extraordinary effort, and even then, victory was uncertain. It was in this critical moment that humans made the final assertion of their autonomy. Rather than simply defending, they began to control the engagement. Coordinated orbital systems, automated drones, and decoy installations created zones that the Empire could not penetrate. Communication networks transmitted precise intelligence in real time, allowing humans to anticipate movements and preemptively neutralize threats. It was a display of strategic mastery that combined intelligence, technology, and human initiative. The Empire's vast power was rendered ineffective against the careful, adaptive strategies of a species that had learned to think ahead and act collectively. By neutralizing threats without unnecessary destruction, humans ensured that the planet remained safe while demonstrating their capacity for control. Major cities, infrastructure, and civilian populations were protected not by chance, but by deliberate planning, innovation, and coordination. The Empire's attacks, once terrifying, were now ineffective. Humans had proven that their strength lay not in brute force, but in foresight, adaptability, and unity. Every victory, every successful defense reinforced the understanding that Earth could not be dominated by fear or firepower alone. The psychological impact on both sides was profound. Humanity's confidence soared, fueled by knowledge of its own capabilities and the repeated failures of the Empire. Citizens realized that their collective actions mattered, and that courage, intelligence, and collaboration could overcome even the most overwhelming threats. The Empire, on the other hand, faced a crisis of morale. Commanders struggled to maintain cohesion, as repeated failures challenged assumptions and created doubt. For the first time, a species had resisted the Empire not through weapons alone, but through ingenuity, determination, and unitized the very traits that made humans unpredictable and formidable. As the engagement continued, humanity consolidated its victories. Every successful countermeasure, every innovation, and every act of courage strengthened the planet's defenses and inspired its people. The Empire, despite all its fleets, weapons, and experience, could not find a way to break the will of humanity. They realized that further aggression would be costly, uncertain, and potentially futile. The recognition that Earth could not be conquered forced a retreat, not as a result of surrender, but as an acknowledgement of humanity's strength. In the aftermath, Earth's leaders moved quickly to secure the planet. Borders were reinforced with advanced defenses. Communication systems were hardened against intrusion, and orbital networks were optimized to prevent future incursions. Humanity had not only survived, but had claimed autonomy, proving that intelligence, courage, and collaboration could overcome overwhelming odds. Citizens continued to rebuild, innovate, and strengthen their world, ensuring that future generations would inherit a planet capable of defending itself against any threat. Stories of this confrontation spread across the globe. Humans shared tales of resilience, ingenuity, and courage, inspiring generations to come. Scientists, engineers, pilots, and ordinary citizens were celebrated for their contributions, proving that the survival of the species depended not only on technology, but on the collective will and intelligence of individuals acting together. Earth had closed its doors to the galaxy, not out of fear, but as a declaration of strength and independence. By the end of this period, the world had changed. Humanity had been tested to its limits, yet had emerged victorious. The Galactic Empire, one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy, had failed to conquer a single planet. Earth had proven that unity, intelligence, and courage could overcome even the most overwhelming power. Citizens carried a sense of pride and purpose, knowing that their ingenuity, resilience, and determination had reshaped history. Humanity was no longer simply a species on a small, blue planet. It had become a force to be reckoned with, a civilization capable of defending itself against any challenge. The final lesson of this confrontation was clear. Power alone does not guarantee control. Strategy, intelligence, adaptability, and courage can rival even the greatest force in the universe. Humans had faced annihilation, but through foresight, collaboration, and determination, they had secured their future. The Galactic Empire had been forced to retreat, acknowledging that Earth was not a world to be dominated, but a civilization to be respected. Humanity had proven that, even against overwhelming odds, survival was possible, and that true strength lay not in weapons, but in the combination of intelligence, unity, and courage.